I am George Eastwood, board chair and interim executive director at the Whitehead Foundation. Long career in blood cell collection and cell manufacturing through companies like Hemocare, BioIVT, and Excellos, and dedicated to putting the patient at the center of all advanced therapy development. Yeah, I think one thing often lost in all blood, plasma, any biospecimen donation is how patient-centric the actual activity is. I think collaboration amongst any and all entities that collect biospecimens, blood, you name it, it all does come back to the patient. So looking at diagnostic development, process development in cell therapies, acute life-saving blood transfusions, transfusions used in sickle cell and cancer patients. I think it's the more we tell those stories about who is affected by these diseases, getting very specific about how the donation helps drive all of the above that I mentioned earlier. I think sometimes we focus on one or the other and not this holistic view of the blood donor themselves, their commitment to coming in every 56 days for whole blood or every 5 to 8 weeks for leukapheresis for cell and gene therapy. They're also important in everything we do, and just connecting all of those dots and honoring donors. And without donors walking in and without the institutions that manage them, there would be so much less innovation and speed, in not only in cell and gene therapy, but everywhere else in drug development. Yeah, I think about the nature of nonprofit-based blood collection, and we think about some of the positive things that came out of COVID was our ability to schedule digitally in other places where we were very, at least in whole blood platelet collections, we were very dependent on walk-ins, mobile blood drives, and others. But COVID forced a lot of us into scheduling, allowing us to forecast need a bit more. And that's where we lived within cell and gene therapy collections forever. For our leukapheresis collections, it was meticulously scheduled, regulated. Donors were reliable, recallable, specific donors in general. Whereas traditional blood banking focused on as many donors as possible coming in and less of a personal touch, let's say. So over the last few years, we've seen those worlds connect. And I think that it bodes extremely well for the future of advanced therapies, namely allogeneic CAR T, understanding which cells work best in what conditions for what therapeutic developer. Personal passion of mine is finding that right donor for the right therapy, and they're not going to be all the same. And really getting the message out there that while a whole blood collection could save up to 3 lives, an allogeneic leukapheresis collection could create hundreds of doses of transformative or life-saving doses of a drug for leukemia patients and beyond. The current impact can be quite drastic when we think about the supply chain that a blood donor material goes through, right? There's an injury in the ER and your blood collection is at the hospital ready to literally save their life. I think the general public understanding a bit more about CAR T and other advanced therapies is the start. And my time chatting with blood donors and preaching the gospel of cell and gene therapies, it's almost always shocking to them that this other type of collection could be used actually as a starting material, the raw material for the next breakthrough and advancement, which can help decrease the supply chain burden of an autologous therapy. But on the other end, it's really, there's been a bit of apprehension to educate donors deeply in that way for fear of alienating them or showing that we're working with pharma companies. I think there's some difficulty in that from a messaging standpoint, maybe not even nationally, globally. So I think patients can stand to benefit if they're front and center at the centers, and not in that I need 2 transfusions a month to keep going. It's I have leukemia, drugs are being developed from your starting material, and you might have the best starting material and characteristics to double the dosage and cut that cost of goods down where it can be affordable in other countries or to everyone here that could be treated by it. I think in autologous CAR T, we've treated about 35,000 patients in the last 7 years. And that's only about 15 to 20% of the addressable population. So we need other mechanisms and other methods to deliver transformative cures. And blood donors being a part of technology innovation and process development, diagnostic tool development, automation tool development. Those are just the normal healthy donors. There's so many avenues in which everyone's most valuable renewable resource can be reused and replenished to instigate innovation in the space. Gathering all of the stakeholders from a blood collection perspective and even other biospecimens connected to blood has a lot of opportunity to define what's most important. I think so many different community blood centers, plasma centers, biospecimen companies are all working in certain ways, but we haven't really set the guideline for what are the industry needs, how can we collaborate, where do we intersect? And I think that can drive a lot of innovation in drug development, specifically in advanced therapies. I think the most important spot there is that can then help educate our therapeutic developers so that they can set the right standards that can be met. So many times, being early to the game in cell and gene therapy on the blood collection side, a therapeutic company comes with an idea in mind, and we jump in and say yes to things. And looking back 10 or 12 years, I've had conversations very recently. Could we have done that differently? Should we have said no for the greater good of the long term rather than just solving that immediate problem? And I think micro communities focused on that help breed the right conversation. And rather than coming up with answers, I think getting communities like that together to ask the right questions and to engage the stakeholders is very important.